I guess I was turned down. There we go. Good evening. I hope you have something to drink so you can enjoy the class. We have a couple other people joining us tonight. So we're just going to relax until that happens. I have a candle lit. So if you want to have a candle lit, you can. Doing shadow work, it is always good to have a light on. I have a healing candle. So it's all about the shadow. Welcome. What a fun Saturday night. I mean, we are going to be diving into some cool stuff. So I'm excited. I'm going to put the chat up too. Now let me see if I can. There we go. I'm still trying to figure out this whole Zoom thing. Sometimes I have it where I can only see one per, like myself, and others I can see everyone. Because I'm gonna have to do some research on this thing. Welcome. We have a few more people joining, I think. So if you do want to take notes, you can have a pen and paper. I have a candle going. Make sure my shadow side doesn't go running off into the woods. Have something to drink so you can enjoy. And I think we're pretty much ready to get started in a minute here. I want to make sure I don't burn my stuff while I'm looking at my work. So welcome, welcome, welcome. All you shadow creatures ready to get tamed. I had to. Okay. Well, I think we're ready to get started here. So I do have the chat up. And I know there's some people that are doing the replay, and that is fine. But I want you to put into the chat on whether, hello, on whether you have met your shadow self. Have you met your shadow self? Contemplate that right now, because we're diving in. So you can say yes, no, maybe. To some people, this is quite new, and to other people, they have maybe been doing shadow work for many years. So what is the human shadow that we're going into? I love this stuff. Like, you don't understand how excited I was to do this workshop tonight. The shadow to me is known as our beast. And if you can think about that inner beast that you may have, maybe when someone flipped you off the wrong way, you have an energy that rises up, or that mama bear energy, or that papa bear, right? I'm going to take care of my family. So to me, the shadow is a beast. but it's also our darker side. Okay. And we all have darker aspects. Now, before I delve into the darker aspects of who we are and the things that we've done, I believe it's no big deal. We all fuck up, pardon my language. And when I have seen, like, I have seen so much doing readings. Okay. You think you've seen some TV shows that are like imprinting? Okay. I've learned so much in my years of doing readings and working with people on a spiritual level and experiencing what they've gone through and how they've healed as they're walking the spiritual path. I've learned many things that have healed myself, but also have healed other people as they're walking their path. So the beast side, our beast. I mean, I love my mistakes. I love my hardcoreness. It's shocking, right? Like when a truck driver talk starts coming out, it's like, whoa, who's this person? It's entertaining in a way, right? But we cannot be ashamed of the darker aspects of life, right? Everybody's heard of sins and everybody's heard of regrets, and we've all experienced them. Some people have experienced things on a larger level and more extreme level than others, but it is our darker side. And we're going into this because our darker side is our hidden side. Okay. It's that lost or forgotten self. It's the place within us that contains all of our secrets, all of our repressed feelings. Think about all the things inside that you've ever wanted to say, but you couldn't. That is part of the spirit of our darker self, our shadow self. It's our primitive impulses, right? It's our instincts. And it's everything that gets our attention that seems to be unacceptable, maybe sinful or evil, right? Negative. So this hidden place actually lurks within our unconscious mind, and it contains our trauma. It's our suppressed or our rejected emotions, our rage, our jealousy, our hatred, our greed, our deceitfulness, our selfishness, our ego. I love the ego because in my path, I've learned that my ego is my best friend. When my ego speaks, when my shadow self speaks, I listen because I trust it. And where I came in my life, the ego and the darker aspect of me, my shadow self, kept me safe when I wasn't safe. And sometimes that's how our shadow self connects to us when we're going through a traumatic event or in a fight, or we're dealing with an injustices in our life. But you cannot escape the shadow. Let me tell you, because everyone has a shadow. Everyone has a shadow. Everyone carries a shadow. Okay. Now, this is interesting because my theory is that everyone carries a shadow within us. And I say that's why I got a belly, because I got a beast in there. Okay. Not that, I'm putting down my stomach, but that's where I believe I carry it. My belly carries my shadow self. It's in that solar plexus, in that sacral plexus, in that root, right? My lower self. And my higher self is outside of me. It's like my channel. Okay. My entire channel is my higher self. My higher self is above me and outside of me. And that's how I believe it works for me. But everyone has and carries a shadow. And the less it is embodied by the individual conscious self, the wilder, the blacker, and the denser it is. So it is very important that we pay attention to our animal instincts, let's say. So everyone has a shadow. It's not separate from us. It's a part of us. It never leaves. It's always there. And it's when we ignore it, it turns against us. It gets pissed off. It's like, hey, lady, you're not listening to yourself, so I'm going to teach you a lesson. It really does do that. Is the shadow self evil? No, it's not. The shadow psyche or the shadow archetypes are not evil, but they are manifestations of our repressed desires, our emotions, even our thoughts. And there's a whole bunch of different shadow archetypes that we're going to be getting into this class, and we naturally process and are and become all of those. So you're going to get to know yourself. Why? Because then you know you're not alone, that you are actually connected to the darker aspects of the soul. So shadow archetypes can be harmful to others, but it is up to us to decide how we want to use our power. We can either use our power for the good or for the ill, for the evil, for the negative. Well, we make those choices in everything we do and how we talk. So the key to shadow work and connecting to this amazing power, it is a divine power, is to become aware of our shadow side so that we can make more conscious choices about how we want to express our power in our world. And personally, I find it more helpful to think of the shadow terms in terms of balance, right? Or imbalance. So generally, our shadow sides, our shadow selves are a manifestation of things that are left unchecked, right? All the bucket lists that flip to the bucket list, right? That's how I see it. So when we go out of balance, our shadow selves arise, right? And it is a manifestation of the things that are unchecked or the things that we have allowed to go too far. Okay. Think about when you get into an argument and it goes too far. You feel that beast. Don't tell me you don't have one. It ain't no little puppy dog. Okay. Well, where did the shadow self idea originate, which I find fascinating because I do like psychology and I like people and I like the way the cultures and the minds think, and all of those things put together is just fascinating. So the concept of the shadow self was actually created in the 1960s, not too long ago, and it was explored by this psychiatrist, Carl Jung. And he said, and if you don't know Carl Jung, you definitely need to look him up. He is one of my favorite people to read and study. Anyway, he said, everybody carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, their daily life, the blacker and denser it is. So this is referring to the unconscious part of the human psyche, okay? The self that is hidden from our own view. And when I say human psyche, I'm not talking about the spiritual psyche. We're talking about our daily life, right? So that self that is hidden from our own view, it's not the self we show to the world, or that we consciously show our friends or family or anybody. So within each person, we are a different being from the outside world. And I guarantee you, you're like freaking amazing in there, just wanting to pop out. Okay. And the shadow self is the hidden part of our personality. If you hide it, the shadow comes out. If you don't express your feelings, the shadow comes out. So it's anything that is not expressed becomes part of the shadow. And our shadows can build. Like I said, I got a beast. Mine ain't no poodle. Okay. I swear I would be a crazy one. I've been called that before. I'm sure we all have, right? That crazy word. I'm not the only one. Okay. So the shadow self is that hidden part, and anything that we put inside becomes part of it. And our shadow side is one of the most important aspects of the self to work on, especially when it comes to magic and divination, right? Because it constantly is working for us. Our shadow sides, our shadow selves actually are constantly working hard for us. It's helping us make sense of everything. And actually, our shadow side is our karmic power at play. It is the result of everything we've done, everything we've experienced, everything we've thought, and everything we didn't do, and more. That's our karmic power. It's not just the deeds. It's what we're holding inside. That's the regenerative power. And it's not meant to be scary, because the shadow compels us to become transformed. It's the power in how we actually move forward. We can't move forward in our life without our shadow. It is meant to guide us and move us forward. So if there is a fear of the future, connecting to the shadow is a must. And when we feel certain things in our life, that is our shadow being invoked. Our shadow is always 24/7 hunting, wanting something. So it does compel us to be transformed. And it's important, okay? Connecting to your shadow is super important. Think about right now in your life, what element is your shadow focusing on? Is it the earth? Are you focusing on material things? Are you focusing on like things that you need tangible or physical healing? Is it air? Is your shadow focusing on your future? Or is the shadow focusing on the fire element, the present forces, the motives? Or is it the water element? Is your shadow focused on the past? It won't let go of the past. I can't release the past. Then it needs healing. And the spirit element is the mind. It's all of it. It's the conscious, it's the subconscious, and it's the superconscious. So our shadow self is our manifesting power. And that's how I want you to view it this week. Okay. So think about your instincts. What is it focusing on right now? Is it focusing on a person? Is it focusing on a situation, something you need to do? Is it focusing on yourself or someone else? What instincts? Who has who and where is that power? Because our shadow is manifesting our power. Our shadow's job is to prompt us whenever we need to protect ourselves, or whenever we need to learn something or do something. Our shadow self is connected to all the lessons of the past, the present, and the future. And when the shadow, the human shadow, is triggered, when it's activated, or when we're shunned, it will undermine us or sabotage our lives. And sometimes this leads to negative mental habits, which we all have and had, okay? Addictions, low self-esteem, mental illness, chronic illness, right? There's all kinds of things that are attributed to an untamed, unconnected shadow self. So think about in your life how often you hear something negative, how often your thoughts are negative. Okay? That is your shadow self. And that shadow self does not want to speak negatively. It's untamed. It wants to walk with you. So there is a power of knowing your shadow side. And that is what the workbook that I have made is all about. So I didn't get into that in the beginning of this class. I'm like, I know I forgot something. Well, how about the entire introduction? Okay, so I do want you to message me your mailing address, because the workbook you're getting is like 175 pages or more. So it's huge. Okay. And that will be getting shipped out. And you don't need the workbook to take this class, but you would want to kind of go through maybe the class a little bit while you're working on it. Okay. So you do get that workbook. Nobody's getting it until you get it. So I wanted to make sure it was special for everyone in this class. So we do want to work on that. And the workbook is going to help us delve into, connect, and honor that shadow aspect of ourself. I like to call it the dark aspect, because to me, when I look at my dark aspect, and sometimes, you know, we can be ugly, but it's like, it doesn't intimidate me. My darkness does not intimidate me because I know I'm a good person. So when I get set off, I know it's just a motivating power, right? I've learned to understand that. So I like calling it the dark aspect, right? The dark goddess aspect that comes through. And that's what it is honoring the dark aspect of yourself instead of feeling ashamed. Yes, we all felt ashamed, but feel ashamed for that moment and for that experience. Don't carry it on, right? So instead of feeling ashamed of the darker aspect of ourself, we can learn that we can trust it, that it's our trust in our abilities and ourself. That's the whole aspect of the shadow self. But it's also a fear of our power, right? Many people have fear of their power. And that's one thing that I like to teach is you shouldn't. You are not, you are not manifesting horrible things unless you are. Do you know what I mean? And being in touch with your shadow self, now you'll really believe in yourself, because the first rule in magic is to know thyself, to honor yourself, because when you know yourself, you know everything that is outside of yourself. And if it's outside of yourself, then it is not part of yourself, unless it is part of your higher self, which is only positive. Okay. So the shadow self wants us to trust in our instincts, in our abilities, in our earthly walk, our earthly path. And the power of the shadow self recognizes where we feel bound or where we feel stuck in life. So if our freedom feels confined, then we will fall into a darker place. This is a path where we actually do lose our minds because we start to feel imbalanced. As soon as we're out of our balance, we're either in our higher self or our lower self. So it is true, when it's true power, this is about our personal transformation, a positive transformation. And one reason why self-care is so important, because self-care motivates how we proceed, right? Our tomorrows are determined by our today's true self. So if we're a bitch today, which holy cow, you should have seen me working on my shadow self. I'm just kidding. Not trying to scare you. So we do have a light and a dark self. Okay. And the dark self, the shadow self, it is our experience of the outer world that distracted us and took our natural formation, right? Our experiences with the world formed us and took away from our natural experience into what we are, who we are, and where we are in our life, right? It creates a comparison. And for us to enter into our inner world, we must first make way through the outer world by dealing with falseness, our distractions and contradictions of who we actually are. Because once you know your shadow self and you're okay with it, you can walk your true authentic path. So our shadow self does not need consciousness to operate. Okay. Actually, it can become quite dangerous if it turns against us, because it affects our well-being, it affects our mentality, our emotions, our physical body, our spirituality. So our shadow self actually has the power to kill the conscious self. You know, people can hear negative voices to the point where it becomes, you know, an imbalance, right? Schizophrenia. So it's important to seek to know this aspect of us, for then it doesn't feel bound. Its job is to protect us and to help us adapt to our surroundings. It's a guide from within. It's our only guide from within, besides our chakra, right? Our chakra power, which it affects. So our shadow self is our ego and the connection we have to the underworld, the self within the lower realms. Many people have experienced seeing shadow spirits, right? Have you ever been somewhere and you've seen like a shadow being? Well, that is the shadow spirit. When we go array and lose ourselves, and we've all lost ourselves and pulled ourselves out of that big hole, right? We know it's a hole and we have to pull ourselves out of it. But when we go array and lose ourselves, we create a heavy, dense spirit. The more negative, the more dense. And think about how many dense spirits we that have lived in our world and died, right? Like I said, if you live your life as an asshole, you're an asshole in the spirit world. You know, you don't just all of a sudden grow wings. No, you're still an asshole, right? But the imprint is a shadow, right? So when we see those shadows creatures, that's what it is. It's their it is a shadow creature. And it can be created by the human spirit. Darkness, but we can also use darkness in a positive way, right? So using darkness in the right way expands our imagination and our concepts of what is possible. So when we are working with our shadow and our shadow knows we're listening and it's that tamed puppy, it will expand our imagination and the concepts of what is possible. Okay, so think about this. Many people can relate to this. Okay, we're going to sex Saturday night. No, just kidding. So, are you more comfortable having sex in the dark? Like, think about that. Are you more relaxed and imaginative, right? All of a sudden, your dude's like Fabio. Just kidding. But do you know what I mean? Right? We can relax and we can go into an imaginative state. And that imaginative state is something that can give us ideas to create the life that we desire. Okay. But we have to get into a place where our shadow feels like it's in that balanced state, wanting to work with our higher self, our light self. And we do have a light self, and our higher self and our lower self, they don't hate each other. They don't work against each other. They want to get to know each other. So the higher self is referenced a lot, right? You've heard about, you have a higher self, and most of us have read or heard the line of connect to your higher self to become abundant and grounded and calmer. But at some point, right? What does a higher self really look like? How do we recognize when we're in our higher state or our lower state? Because we have both and we're connected to both 24/7. So our light self is our higher self. It's our divine self, and it truly is divine. It will never, ever speak anything negative. It doesn't. It doesn't know negativity. And it guides us. And it's connected to the higher realms of consciousness. It's pure spirit and it's only divine. It's actually a divine consciousness. And our higher self is connected to it. And we can tell when we're connected to it by feeling calm and centered. Because your higher self is the voice that is meant to calm the ego. The ego speaks up, no, you can't do that. And the higher self says, yes, she sure can. And she's going to do it like with abundance. So our higher self is meant to calm the ego. Does it? Think about that. Does your higher self actually calm your ego when it's speaking? Take note on that next time. The other thing we can tell is when we're connected to our higher self is we are compassionate. We actually care about what everybody thinks and want to take care and make sure that things are in balance. We're not sitting there with resentment. You know, people that you love, there's days like you just resent them, and other days you're like, oh, I love you so much. Okay, higher, lower self right there. So when we're seeing our family and the people we care about, like we love them, you know, you're connected to your higher self. But when you're sitting there going, asshole, didn't clean up, you know, that is lower self. And it's okay to live in both. Like this class is not telling you to repress, it's telling you to be. The other thing is when we have long-term focus in our life, like when we're focusing on the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, whenever we put anything in our vision that is future, long-term, we are connected to our divine self. And when we get win-win situations, it's like, yes, I'm in that flow and things turn out our way. It's like, yes, thank you. You are connected to your higher self. And the other time you're connected to your higher self is when you hold your boundaries And you're like, nope, nope. That was the hardest thing for me. You can ask anyone. I hate saying no, and I shouldn't have said that out loud. Okay. But saying no, I have to like go through a process. Okay. So our boundaries are actually connected to our higher self, right? We're the gatekeepers of our heaven. And when we feel positive, anytime we feel positive, joy, laughter, that's all higher self connection. Okay. So we all have those little voices in our heads that speak to us when we're seeking guidance. But we also have the voices in us that feed us doubt and fear. So those voices come from two very different sources, our higher self and our lower self. And there's some guidelines that will help you determine which voice that you're listening to. Okay. And remember, they're opposites. So the higher and the lower self are opposites. We're the one in between, right? So the higher self is loving, where the lower self is jealous, right? Or the higher self is confident and the lower self is insecure. The higher self feels fulfilled and the lower self is like, I don't have it, right? I mean, that happens to me. I'm like, oh, my life is wonderful. I love it. And I'm like, I need to get out of here and go on vacation. Okay. So I think that's my higher self telling me go on vacation too, right? But whatever, right? Fulfilling is important in our life, to feel fulfilled, to be on the path of fulfilling. So when we are in a place where we're lacking or we feel like it's blocking that path to fulfillment, our lower self comes up. Our higher self urges us to fulfill our purpose, where our lower self wants us to delay our purpose, right? Our higher self wants to have that win-win, where our lower self wants the competition, right? They still want to win, but it's all about the competition, right? Our higher self is secure in relationships, where our lower self fears abandonment. Our higher self has a clear conscience, and our lower self will feel guilty. Oh yeah, that's a good thing though, right? It is guided, our higher self is guided by actions, where our lower self will try to find that game, right? And try to seek manipulation if it's untamed, right? Our higher self is always consistent, where our lower self is inconsistent. Our higher self makes us feel warm and protected, and our lower self makes us feel cold and prickly. So if you're like freezing for a week, that's a sign that your lower self is in play. Okay. Our higher self has a positive voice, and it can even be warming to you, where our lower self is like demanding. Okay. Can be also grumpy or short, right? Our higher self is generous, where our lower self is protective or even greedy, right? Our higher self is like secure in their footing, where our lower self becomes clumsy. So clumsiness, I know some of you are clumsy. I'm not going to say any names. And one's so lower self, right? Oh, my shadow side's active, right? So I asked you, have you met your shadow self? Well, when you support yourself, the universe will help you. So it's really important for us to meet and look at our shadow self, because it can actually set us free. And ultimately, our goal is to integrate the shadow parts and to stop rejecting parts of our personality the parts that we hate, or the parts we're ashamed of, or the parts we're upset about, or that we feel embarrassed by. We do need to heal these parts. And we heal these parts by bringing these parts forward into our everyday lives, but also into the light, by just being authentic and knowing it's okay to be that way and feel supported just by being you. So I am inviting you to examine and own these parts within yourself. And this is for your own peace. This course is not to put you into a state where you're not finding peace. And that's what I'm excited about, because I know you'll have each an own personal enlightenment. Okay, so I would like to know what you think of what you go through, or the course as you're doing it. Okay, so this is about you and having the freedom. So when we get triggered, our natural reaction is to blame the person who triggered us, right? And react outwardly, right? And I'm like super quick. But if we heal, okay, when we choose to stop projecting our hurt onto others and take a look inside, we are not ignoring our shadow. So we don't want to ignore our shadow. The effects of ignoring our shadow is not good. When we ignore it, our shadow finds ways to make us aware that it exists. Okay? Chaos. Like, as soon as chaos comes up in my life, I'm like, oh, I know. Okay, I gotta pay attention to myself. Okay. Or self-loathing. Okay, like when we ignore it, some of these things we're gonna experience self-loathing, poor self-esteem, self-deceit, right? All of a sudden we have all these excuses, or deceiving others. And we definitely experience anxiety and depression. So the moment we start to feel stress, that is going to call our shadow forward. Offensive behavior. Whenever we experience offensive behavior, especially towards others, it's like, game on, I'm going to protect them, right? Or if we're struggling to have healthy relationships with others, okay? Self-sabotage, that is an untamed beast in there, right? You have all of these opportunities, and then all of a sudden you just screw yourself right out of them. It's like shutting the door to the universe. And it's like, oh my God, I shouldn't have done it. Right? Self-absorption and an inflated ego. Do you know someone that's got an inflated ego? Like, oh my God, shadow all the way around. I think I got a little bit of an ego. I love it. Okay. I have to keep my beast happy. I even have a furry pillow just to pet it to make sure that my beast knows that I like it. Okay, so overreactions is another thing. When we overreact, our shadow comes forward. It wants to express itself, especially if we don't know how to react. Think about the last time you overreacted and how you acted. Our overreactions create action, reaction, right? Like, it's right in the word. And that means it's actually got to do with something that has occurred before. So our reactions or our overreactions are part of a pattern. And our overreactions also create energies and impressions. So whenever we overreact, how do you make other people feel? It's really important to know what power you're dishing out and to understand it. And once you understand it, try to explain it out loud to hear what the other person would hear. I honestly did not realize how hardcore I was. Okay. So I had to back it up. And then all of a sudden, years later, I'm watching this reality show and I said to Brett, man, these reality shows, these women are just like crazy. I'm like, I can now step it up a notch. I can, bitch it up. I'm too nice now. Right? So we can, so our overreactions do create the energies and impressions that we don't want. And so it's one way to handle that is try to explain out loud and try to hear what the other person would hear. Like rationalize the situation. And you may have to do this until you actually find an honest explanation that you can use as a tool for when you do overreact. Like pre-plan your overreaction. Okay. I mean, seriously, so that you're comfortable with it and you just like it becomes a rule. Nope, I'm going to react. I'm leaving. Right. Just you don't want to leave your negative reactions left because it will grow and it will return to us threefold because our shadow is part of our karma. Right. And grudges. Right. We've all held a grudge against someone. But not dealing with them can actually have consequences. So it's important for us to recognize the people we hold grudges against. And when they do come up in our life, like, why do you hold a grudge against them? Think about the grudge from the other person's point of view. Like, do they know you hold a grudge? Or is it all repressed? Right? Do you think they hold a grudge against you? Like, is this a mirrored effect? And what energy is this grudge creating? Is it hurtful? Are you angry? What kind of repressed emotions is it blocking and putting inside of you? Are you the hurt one or are they? So you do want to get rid of grudges. Make it a personal rule that you won't hold on to them. You don't want a negative attachment. Cut the cord because it does cause you more negativity and nobody sees the things that you do in the same way. That's what's unique about us, right? We can all look at the same blue in the sky, but it's actually a different color of blue to all of us. So we need to understand that grudges only create negative attachments that create a cycle. And this form will eventually become a negative pattern, but also a very skewed perception that will build and build into a distraction from your actual path and your actual connection to the people that you're holding grudges against. Okay. So one thing that I do want to talk about is the shadow's intuition. I love the shadow. I love the intuition. So doing shadow work can be very healing in every way. We can learn how to release and restore. And doing shadow work will also give you a more motivating power and help you become more intuitive. So we step into our power and become stronger and more confident in walking authentically. Like imagine just being you for an entire day and nothing pokes you, right? Our pace is our freedom. The pace that we walk in our day is our freedom. And it's also our motivating power and magic that is hidden and unseen. And it works quite beautifully with our higher self. It's our masculine and feminine power and harmony. So my shadow self knows what I want. And it helps me guide me to those things that I seek in my life. But if you have to want, but you do have to want things in your life. You have to have something that your beast can go after, something that the shadow self can feel proud of bringing forth to you. And that's what its job is. Okay. So when we take a look at our feelings, okay, let's talk about that. Our shadow's intuition. So we have our intuitive pathways, okay? We have the clairsentience, which is our clear feeling, our psychic feeling. Psychic feelings are clear. That's why it's clear feeling. Well, when our clear feeling, when our psychic feelings, or when our feelings don't matter, our beast rises. So our clairsentience, our psychic self, needs to feel. And if we do not feel, or if our feelings don't matter, our psychic beast that feels comes forward. Okay? Who is invoking that? You want to take note on who's invoking these energies in you, right? When we are not being heard. So our psychic self, when it comes to our clairvoyance, our psychic hearing, if we are not being heard, our psychic self comes forward, the beast. The beast has to be heard. Okay? So when your partner's not listening to you, or your mother's not listening to you, okay, we are invoking our beast. Okay, who's invoking that beast? Right? When we aren't being seen. So when people can't see us for who we are, that invokes our beast. When we are not being seen the way we feel we should be seen, our beast comes forward. Okay, that's what it wants. It wants to be seen. When we know that there is a disconnect, right? But when we experience more than one of these triggers together, then it's really bad. If our beast doesn't feel like we are being heard or seen or felt, activate power. Okay, that's like super beast coming forward, right? Not just one aspect of the beast that doesn't feel like they're seen, but now they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel felt, or they don't know, they're totally disconnected. All of our psychic pathways become overshadowed, and it puts us into beast mode. Our shadow is invoked with our psychic pathways being dishonored by what we are experiencing through ourselves, or because of others, or situations, or whatever we pick up. So our shadow is our psychic protection, right? So when you are being invoked, who is it? What's the situation? Why? Why is your shadow being invoked? And where are you? So knowing why these things are being invoked is part of your mastery. And as these things are getting invoked on a psychic level, they're also infecting our body, mind, and spirit, because that energy is through all of our chakras, right? It's going through our auric body, 12 light bodies, right? Activated by the shadow. So it is important for us to banish things that we don't like, protect ourselves from things we don't like, to keep ourselves pure, but also keep creating. We have to be in a place of creation. And let's not talk about, I forgot to talk about the psychic smell or the psychic touch, taste. Okay. So when you actually miss, and it's like, oh my God, my feelings haven't been heard today. Nobody's like getting it, and you're feeling alone, like nobody's getting you. If you have more than one of those things going on, all of a sudden your taste goes off or your smell goes off. We need to feed the shadow. Your shadow will start to, our food cravings. I need chips. I need Diet Pepsi. Okay. That's my shadow. That's like, it's telling me you're craving any type of food craving represents your shadow side active, right? Which also represents you need to connect to that element, right? What element is it, right? So how do we feed the shadow? Well, we feed the shadow by our cravings, right? If I crave something, I feed it. I do not believe in starving my shadow. Okay. If my shadow wants something, I'll make it. Okay. I'll find a way. We also feed our shadow through our day, how we are in our day, right? Or our perceptions. The things we focus on today will be manifesting for tomorrow. That's why you don't want to focus on other people. You want to focus on your life, right? So our shadow is our perception, unless we are actually tapped into our higher self or in a neutral place. And our perception is everything. So when we are seeing through our eyes, that's our beast. When we are tapping into, divination, then we tap into our higher self. But our worldly life is more connected to our shadow self. And perception is everything. So our discomfort should represent growth. If you're uncomfortable in your life, then there's still growth. You're still growing. Seek it. If you have problems, then we need to look at them like challenges. Problems and challenges are two different things. Okay? When we think of rejection, that means we need to look at our direction, right? Redirect. Rejection means go the other way, right? Our triggers, all of our triggers reveal wounds. So if someone triggers us, that's a wound, right? They just picked the scab right off, right? Some people will pick that scab off and eat it. So our triggers reveal wounds. I had to say that. Our darkness reveals our light. Our failures are our lessons. Our fears are our teachers, right? Fears are my number one thing. I feel a fear and I'm like, yes, it's purpose. I'm doing it. Unless they're like, Georgina, I'll kill you. Don't do it. Don't jump off a plane, right? Then I would obviously follow that. Our pain is meant to be our power, right? Our pain, we have to overcome. How do we overcome our pain? Freaking willpower, okay? Somehow, whether it's our healing ability or our minds or the medicine, right? We are overpowering the pain, okay? Well, our shadow represents every aspect of us. Our mental side, our emotional side, our spiritual side, as well as our physical side. So anything that we experience that is discomfort, we can actually tap into the power of our shadow side for healing. Okay. So same with triggers. We all have our triggers, but that puts us in different moods and different states of being. And understanding our triggers can help us deal with them as they are invoked in that moment, right? So knowing what your triggers are important. Don't let it surprise you every time it comes up, but it's been coming up for the last 20 years, right? But every time it comes up, you're surprised, right? No, know what your triggers are. Think about them. And what are they doing? What are these things that trigger you? Right? Look for the traits in others that trigger your feelings, because they are feelings of inferiority for ourselves, right? A trigger is when someone or something outside of us gets us angry, or they get their hooks on us, right? And it's like, oh, it's imprinted. But triggers aren't actually about the person pushing our buttons. They're about us. The person or the situation that triggers us is, reflecting an unhealed, unconscious wound that we already have. So a sense of moral inferiority indicates that we're missing an element to something. And that's why we judge and have feelings towards it. It's because there's something missing. So what is it that could be made conscious for you, right? What is that sense of moral inferiority that you need to recognize, right? And assimilate it, make it a possibility of what it is that you're creating. That's part of your morals, right? There's a key to that. And I want to go into, so think about your intuition and how it works positively and negatively, and honor it that way. But I do want to go into, I don't know if I want to end at this. It's victimhood. Do I end at this, or should I go forward? Okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to move forward. I know some of you are like, past the victimhood. I know. So I want to go into it, and then we don't have to next class. But we all have been victim to someone. Okay. Maybe it was family, maybe it was bullies, maybe it was abuse, maybe it was from being made fun of to being seriously abused. Maybe you're a victim a few times, maybe you're a victim all the time. Okay. But everyone can relate to being a victim. And we love to root for the underdog, right? The disadvantage. And there's nothing wrong with that, because this hidden aspect is hidden within the victim is the victory. And I believe part of our fascination with feeling this victim archetype is part of our psyche, but there's also attachment to it. And that attachment is the desire for transformation and personal empowerment that actually comes from the victim becoming the victor. So the root of the victim archetype is fear. And it's that we cannot survive or will not survive, not just physical survival, but survival of our identity, our hopes and our dreams, our sense of self. And deep down, there's a belief that you don't deserve to thrive. And the victim is a way to have passive control over our life, right? And we need to get rid of that. All victims are entitled. And it may take you some time to see your own sense of entitlement, but it's important to identify it to be able to transform this interesting archetype from our shadow to light. And that's working through the victim, which may be the most difficult thing you've ever done, but it is the most life-altering thing as well. It is possible to be a victim without there being a villain too. Your villain may be something as simple as your work schedule or seasonal allergies, but it doesn't take long for the victim to perceive the situation. And there's extreme examples of victims and villains, such as prisoners of war and captors to child and abusive parents, right? Or the jailer and the convict. But the dynamics between them are the same. One, the villain has a power, And the other, the victim, is powerless and at the mercy of the other. And recognizing the villain is important as recognizing your victimization. And here's a sample of some of the things that we can feel victimized by, right? Motherhood or fatherhood, feeling like a victim to your children and their care, as though you have no choice, right? Think about our illnesses or our injuries. Oh my God, that's a common one, right? We feel victim to our body. Like, how can we not? Right? So feeling like we have no control over our body, right? But we have to initiate that our body will heal, or that your body has failed us, right? We carry that. We're like, oh my God, my body has failed us, failed me. And you can't come to terms with it. We all have that, okay, in some way, okay? I can pinch a few areas. It's insomnia, not getting sleep, and allergies. Those are actually two more common villains that many people have to deal with. The lack of control that these issues cause, right? This can cause a normal person into instant victimization. I'm not sleeping. I haven't slept for a week, right? Money is another villain for many people. The lack of money, feeling victimized by the debt collectors, or feeling like you don't make enough money that you deserve, right? Those are samples or examples of how you may feel victimized by the lack of money. Or on the flip side, you might feel like your wealth is a burden. I wish, but if you may wish that your wealth is a burden, and you may be victimized by how others expect you to help them, right? That you have loads of money. Your relationship to money is a great place to observe your victimhood. Are you a victim financially? Our jobs too. Our jobs can be a source of victimization. We can feel unhappy or abused in the job and feel powerless that we can't change our situation. We believe that our financial security comes from the job or career, as an example. So we feel victimized by our job. Maybe maybe we're the CEO of our own company. So we may find ourselves a victim to others' expectations and demands, and paying employees before ourselves, or even the victim to other people's perception of your role or your business. Another interesting one nowadays, gender. I don't even want to go into that topic because I don't even know all the words for everything I'm supposed to use, and that's honest. But you can feel victimized by being a woman or a man, and especially by the roles that, over cultural expects of a man or a woman, right? Like, this victimization can be seen in many areas today. On TV, stereotypes are all over. It's amplified, it's highlighted, right? Education, that's a source of victimization. You may feel like you have to be controlled by the system of education that decides what hoops you must leap in order to get a degree to do what you want, or that the law demands you to go to school if you're a younger person, right? Religion and organization, right? Religion and their organizations feel victimizing because of their expectations and demands that many religious organizations require the person to be a good person, right? This is true. Like, the organizations do that. They have the stakes are higher because your soul or personal salvation is on the line, right? Another one is the villain that is our body, right? Appearance of the body, feeling like you're overweight, aging, genetic inheritances, blaming, even when it's done, and we're still giving power to it. And we cannot, right? We can feel like a victim in our country because of our country's government or the law to another one, Maybe you feel like the law is unjust and we're a victim to that. Or we are justified in complaining and all of the extreme cases, you know, the custody battles or losing a child and the hungry and the everything that's out there. We can grow resentful toward our country and our law, right? Or the expectations of our culture and the stereotypes, right? Can be a real means to fall in victimization. If you're from another country, you may feel shame about your heritage, or you may be trying to fit in when it goes against who you are. So this can cause you to feel like a victim on how others precede you. Think about our fate, right? Many people have resigned themselves to sorrow fate, feeling like a victim of fate, believing that they're unable to have any other control over their destinies. Ideas about predestination and everything that happens was pre-planned, and it is going to take away responsibility. And one of the key aspects to the victim is the avoidance of personal responsibility, right? So villains, and perhaps the most powerful of all villains, is our thoughts, our emotions, and our fears. And these inner perpetrators can have more power to victimize than all the other villains that I just talked about. Okay. So enabling and victimization go well together. And in most relationships where there's a strong victim, there will also be an enabler nearby, ready to reinforce the victim's victimization. So many victims will seek out enablers to keep the victim feeling justified and entitled. And enablers do enjoy their role because it guarantees that the victim will be needing them, and they will have the loyalty and acceptance of the victim, as well as the cultural nod of approval for your support of the victim. So if you're not sure about your victim and the mask it wears, just notice the enabler in your life. Enablers are easy to spot because they're the person you seek out when you want someone to sympathize with your struggle. And they encourage that sense of the victim being wronged. So enablers enjoy the attention and being special. And perhaps they are the only one the victim can talk to. So enablers are simply victims in disguise. This trap of approval can keep the enabler as blind as the victim. So the victim is a perpetrator. And when we're feeling victimized, we are almost always in the act of victimizing someone else simultaneously. Like, for example, if you feel ill and you're feeling victimized by your illness, you tend to complain, you're suffering loudly, right? We all do this, and this can victimize others. And then when you make your illness the center of attention and nothing can be more important and others feel overlooked, right? Another example is when you're feeling like a victim and you withdraw from others. I mean, this can be painful to your loved ones. And that is a form of victimization for them, right? Expectations and obligations create victims. When you have unmet expectations, we feel victimized by a failed expectation. It wasn't supposed to rain today. The weather said there wasn't going to be some rain, right? Or when you feel obligated to do something and you don't want to. How often do you do that? That turns into victimization. The vicious cycle of victim to perpetrator, then back to victim, is a painful realization because the victim needs to feel innocent and blameless to maintain their victim status. Unless, of course, you've turned your sense of powerless into self-victimization. And self-victimization is victimizing the self. And it is a sneaky way of being a victim without being obvious. But the pattern is identical to that of any other victim or villain relationship. You can victimize yourself by beating yourself up, by speaking harshly, and regarding yourself with negativity or self-loathing. You will not accept praise from others easily, or be willing to look at your own success and personal empowerment without having a secret dagger used to stab yourself in the back. What one gains by victiming their self, entitlement. Of all the victim dynamics, okay, self-victimization is the strongest element of entitlement. And there is a deep unconscious belief that the self-abuse the victim regularly inflicts is a great big entitlement ribbon. Okay, I have suffered too much, right? I am entitled to my unhappiness, my grief, my depression, my pain, my revenge. This sort of entitlement can be so difficult to spot that many who self-victimize are unaware of this entitlement. And the victim says, I will never have what I need unless you, or unless they, or unless it, right? Self-victimization says, I will never have what I need and want because there's something wrong with me or therefore, right? And that gives you the entitlement to complain, to remain stuck, to impose your suffering. I mean, we all do it. What I'm talking about is a natural thing. So even though you may be like, oh my God, it's so much of what I do, we do it all the time, but we need to be aware of it. So don't go into a place where you're like, oh my God, go into a place where you actually are recognizing it so that you can catch it, because this is something that's part of our psyche, our darker self. And in the next class, you'll learn more about that because we actually experience it 2 weeks out of every single month. Our shadow self is in power. Okay. So you do want to see it. You do want to see, that all of this gives us the entitlement to complain or remain stuck or impose our suffering on ourselves or others, or to reject the things that are offered to us. Self-victimization destroys the blessings that we should be receiving, right? Self-victimization is the ultimate example of the victim-perpetrator dynamic, as how you see as painful as it is on both ends. And you don't have to look very far to find, the examples of this archetype. We all are connected to that archetype. And it is important for us to identify the sort of victim that we are relating to mostly on our way, and the method of entitlement that goes with the victim. So there's many different variants of the victim. And I know that we're 15 minutes over, but I can't leave you with just that. I have to finish this part. And then we'll go on to next class. So the victim has been around for so long that there are many expressions of the victim. So I'm going to touch on a few of them, and hopefully you'll be able to identify one or two within yourself, and hopefully it will help you discover a way to the way that you work, right? Most of us can be quite unaware of what the victim looks like in me, right? In you, right? Well, finding it easy to spot it in others. So I want to go through this list and see if you can see yourself in any of them. And you don't have to put it on there. That's me. Okay, just reflect. So the patient is one. The victim to your health or lack of, right? The victim to our bodily functions, our injuries, right? And the entitlement to feel healthy. Like we should all be, I believe we should all be able to be healthy, right? To be healed and to have someone else responsible for our health and healing. Maybe a doctor, maybe the angels or the universe. I'm like, universe is my doctor. Come on. It should also, it's also common to place the blame on the doctors when things go wrong, right? Ugh. The prisoner. Oh my God. The prisoner. Victim to someone else's desire, right? Their manipulation, their demands and control. They're entitled, right? Or entitled to their revenge or their negative moods all the time or their anger. So being a victim to someone else's energies. And then there's the long sufferer. The long sufferer is when we fall victim to circumstances and others' actions. Like that sucks. So, you know, complaining in the support of others and things that they've done. And it's like, if they didn't do that, I could have done this. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you said it, right? The robot. The robot is a victim to internal programming and stories. We are entitled to being disconnected, judgmental, and superior, right? I always tell people, go through your self rules and break some of those, because some of those rules you have on yourself. I don't like going here. Well, maybe that's where you should be going, right? I want to meet a woman, but I won't leave my house. Maybe you need to leave your house, right? So the robot, they're victim to this internal program that they created, their own rules, right? Look at religion and their rules, internal programming and the stories that they have. Then there's the weakling, victim to external demands, victim to the belief that you're helpless, you're overwhelmed, right? You don't have the ability to do it. We're entitled to inaction. I'm a woman, right? Confusion or even fear, advice and help, right? We want help. Then there's a crusader, and the crusader is a victim of loneliness, negativity, and self-hatred. And they're entitled to recruit others into being victims and victimizing those that they believe to be deserved to be punished. So they're the doomsayers. They're the ones that say everything is wrong. Oh, the world is fucked up. And that's it. Then there's the doormat. The doormat is victim to being taken advantage of, overworked, used and abused. But they're entitled to love, support, acceptance, approval, and friendship. Then there's the hider, and they're victim to their lack of confidence or their own inadequacy. So they're entitled to withdraw or hide. They're hiding their true feelings, but yet they're judging others. Right? Or they want others to understand them, but they have to read their mind. Right? The dummy victim. I know, I see it. No, you can't say that. I sure can. There's a dummy victim who perceives the lack of intelligence and the mental acuteness. So they're entitled to be uninformed, blameless, and irresponsible. Oh, I can't do that. I don't do numbers. You're going to have to do them, right? Like just dishing it off. I can't do that. Acting, I said, I'm going to start acting dumb. I said, I actually should go into the dummy victim and be dumber than I am. Maybe life will be easier if I wasn't so smart. Okay. The cohort or accomplice. Victim to others' influences, their pressure and manipulation. Right? And they get that finger pointed energy. There's the user, where we're victim to users. We're victim to scarcity, the things that they want, right? Maybe even robbery. When we get robbed or ripped off, we are being victimized by a user, right? Even high gas prices, to me, that's a victim to scarcity, the user, right? The righteous victim who turns trials and tribulations and misfortunes, where we really need respect and rewards and compliments. So with those ideas, you can see how these archetypes influence the way our personal victimhood is actually expressed, like how it expresses itself. While there's other variants. So hopefully that list will help you identify which shadow victimhood is in play, right? And then you can help yourself through that. And all of those things are an aspect of life. Okay. So now that I've covered all of these behaviors of the shadow victim, there's, other symptoms that will make it easier for us to realize when we have fallen victim to the shadow aspect. Okay. And this is what I'm leaving you with tonight. So there's behavior. Okay. Behavior of no energy or a strong draw towards addictive behaviors, right? I have no energy. I need a smoke. Okay. Constant need to distract yourself, blaming yourself or others, complaining often and loudly, as well as withdrawing from others, right? And all of a sudden, inaction, all of those. And our emotions is when we feel angry or frustrated or hurt or depressed, right? We feel guilty, shameful. Our emotions have fallen victim into shadow world. We feel worthless or hated, and these feelings are all clues to understanding how to transform yourself. Okay. Where the top one, when I discussed behavior, the action towards it would be taking control. That there is a place that you need to take control and dominate your behavior. And this one is understanding how to transform your emotions from the shadow. And then there's the shadow victim storyline, where it's not my fault, or it's all my fault. I'm always getting hurt. No one really understands me. I didn't have a choice. What am I supposed to do? This always happens to me. Okay, and so on. So you do want to pay attention to those things and know that the victim The shadow victim always has expectations. So what is the expectation that you want? Is it, maybe it's an expectation of others or yourself? Okay. And that's where it's moving into. So we're going to stop there at expectations. And I'm not going to give you any homework because I will be sending out your shadow books. And next class, we're going to delve into a lot more. So listen to this again and just try to pay attention to yourself. Be aware of your light and dark. You're not going to fall into any type of negativity, but you do want to listen to the psyche that's within. And some of the exercises you're going to get in this workbook will get that psyche talking to you in the way that you want it to. Okay. So just be, for this week, we're going to meet again on the 17th. For this week, just be aware, just listen to your voices, the negative and the positive. Just listen. Okay. So I want to pull a card on our shadow selves. And see what we get. And I think that we're going to be the shadow self. I think the next class is before the new moon. So I was hoping for that. So the new moon is the shadow's moon. That's why it's the dark moon. And I'm going to get into moon magic with the shadow next class as well and give you some things to practice. So this week, this week, give me 3 cards on our shadow self. What is in play? What does our shadow want? Ready? Psychic abilities. I love that because people don't realize that our psychic abilities are not just like, higher self. It's also the lower self. Right? A lot of the spirits that I communicate with, they're not all like floating angels with wings. They're in this realm. They're in the spirit realm, right? So we can definitely connect to anybody, but your psychic abilities in the shadow are going to be in play this week. Doing what? Focusing on our well-being. That's what this is all about. Okay, understanding that aspect. That looks like a rebirthing card too. And willpower. Okay, so also having the strength to recognize, oh, I'm going into shadow mode, right? Sometimes you want to, but most of the times you want to carry it through, not push it back in, right? So I'm going to leave you with that, and we'll talk next class. So yeah, message me your shipping. I don't have everybody's, and I'd like it all close together so I can just grab them and put them on the shipping things. Okay. I'll let you go. This will be sent out to you tomorrow so you can re-listen to this. And I suggest you do that before next class. I'm going to let you go. Thanks for joining. Blessings. Have a great night. Bye-bye. You're welcome.